basic traction control system would have been nice, especially since when you lose the grip on your tires, specifically when you're using old tires, traction control can come up to be a very handy feature. Or when you're riding in the wets, having power modes helps. But this bike doesn't have any of that. It's all natural. You have to manage the 120 odd horsepower on your own. There is no rider aids for you to depend on. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with depending upon my own skills to control this horsepower. But you know, people who lean into the corners really hard, they might actually prefer having a traction control system. But the power in itself is very manageable. The throttle response is obviously instantaneous, but the delivery, it doesn't really scare you because it is a rapid bike. It is a rapid bike, but the delivery is kind of smoothed out to be okay. It's kind of difficult to talk because I'm managing a lot of things here. There's a truck in my lane, so I'm just feeding the brake. It's pretty good. See, that's the problem of us road testers. The moment we think that we can actually enjoy the bike a little bit, it turns out that we can't because there is a truck sitting in our lane. Oh yeah, the quick shifter. Oh my god, this is powerful. This is powerful. You know, this is kind of a bike that if you want to ride a liter bike and you're not really comfortable, you're kind of scared. Though these days liter bikes do come with a 600cc power mode, which is like the mode C. I think most liter bikes that I've ridden recently has it. So a lot of people actually prefer buying the liter bike and just putting it to mode C, and then when they can manage it well, they can actually move it to mode B, which is like the full power of a liter bike with a little slower uptick. That's a way most riders prefer it these days, specifically riders in the United States, because they don't have this licensing norms. On the Europe, it's a completely different ballpark. You don't get the license for many years. You have to graduate each license class to move on to the next one. And the idea was that you actually initially, when there was not so much electronics like traction control and all that, handling a liter bike right out of the box was even more difficult. I mean, modern bikes have better throttle response. The snatchy throttle has gone to be replaced by a very smooth throttle, so it used to be more difficult to control a liter bike. Yes, liter bikes back then used to be 150 to 170 horsepower. Right now they're 200 horsepower, but this 200 horsepower is a little bit more manageable because of all the electronic nannies taking care of you in case you decide to screw up. So back in the day, when all the electronics wasn't there, people actually preferred having a liter bike after riding a few years on this type of super sport, and I can completely understand why. It's down low when I'm accelerating to 100, it doesn't feel that much different to a liter bike, but afterwards when I'm moving from say 140 above, there is a little bit of a difference. So unfortunately, the Daytona can no longer be bought new from a Triumph dealerships because it's not sold in India. There was this thing that BS3 bikes or Euro 3 bikes, whatever you want to call them, are no longer allowed. So Daytona doesn't actually have a Euro 4 or a BS4 compliant version. So they decided to discontinue the bike. Specifically, this is running the old 675cc triple cylinder inline triple engine configuration that is known for Triumph, and it's a very smooth motor, but the new version is a 765cc that's gonna be on the Triumph Street Triple. This bike, Triumph is no longer interested in selling, so the next year we might have a Daytona 765. That might be a pretty good contender for those who like super sport, but I can completely understand why the matured world markets like European markets and US markets are moving away from super sports. Yes, there's a amount of wind protection that you get on these bikes, but to be very honest, that wind protection isn't worth the sacrifice of this over aggressive riding position, especially if you're not taking this bike to the track. So that's just my idea of why people are moving away from this type of motorcycles.